All right, for those dedicated few, and God, I hope there aren't a lot of you, you probably just saw me on a whole nother show with Brent Brookhouse talking there. And we are now live once again with the MMA Prospectus because it's not just fight week, it's fight taking over your life week and draining all the rest of the relevant information out of your brain. And we can't do our show on Friday afternoon because that's the TUF 20 finale. So I'm joined by Patrick Wyman and Tom Grant midweek. Guys, thanks for hanging in with me and doing the show early.
It's
Dude,
no problem, Zane. I think I just saw your soul leave through your mouth.
this is just one of those weeks. I recorded Heavy Hands today. I did a video thing with Nate this morning. I did press row yesterday, plus another thing. Plus, I'm doing the Sherdog Roundtable tomorrow night. Like, this is just that week. For whatever reason, I think every single media person I know is just fucking slammed this week.
Yeah, I've got 2 shows to do tomorrow too. So
We're bad. We're bad people. We're bad
yeah.
people.
I don't got it. I don't have it right now. I'm gonna get it on the other end because I'm actually missing UFC on Fox Live, so I'm gonna watch it on recording, and then I got to make my Inside the Guard show in addition to watching the event on Sunday, which is gonna be kind of a mad scramble. So I'm gonna get it on the other end.
You
Yeah,
better.
you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
You make it sound like you make it sound like you're diarrheaing after the event here. Gotta real bad, huh?
Yeah.
That'll happen.
All right. So because this has been a mad crush of a week, we don't have an extra topic this week. We can't think outside the box on short notice. It's just not happening. Um, we are instead just going to tackle last week's prospects, this week's prospects. What did we see? What are we looking for? Super simple shit. Um, so last week was UFC 181, and there were 2, 3, 4, pretty much just 4 fights to pay attention to if you're looking for young fighters on the rise. And they all told us something, whether it was new information or not. First, to start out with, Clay Collard, Alex White, Pat. What the fuck were you thinking? What the fuck were you thinking?
What the fuck was I thinking? I mean, I'm just Zane, I am frankly offended that you are showing so little respect to 2 well-rounded, defensively sound warriors like Clay Collard and Alex White. I mean, I think this is, it's disgusting, and you should be disgusted with yourself, to quote our fearless leader Dana White.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think Collard is just so much more polished than White is as a striker, which is not a high bar.
No.
I mean, I want to make that very clear. Defensively, these dudes are trash. They have zero in the way of ancillary skill sets at all. I mean, Collard can wrestle a tiny little bit, and he looked like he tried to hit some fucking white belt submission off his back. Maybe Tom can give us a little insight into that fucking barn burner.
Yeah, I want the breakdown on that. Where's the Gracie video for that?
I would like to see that. I would also like to see, while we're on the topic of breakdowns of shitty things, the attempted lateral drop from UFC 180 by that prospect who must have seen that on a fucking Lucha Libre show and just went for it. But leaving that aside. I mean, I don't know what there is to take from this fight. These dudes are basically action fighters, and maybe, if everything goes right with their training, then maybe they could reach out and touch the top 15 with a fucking 10-foot pole, maybe.
I think Clay Collard's he is dedicated and set for that mid card guy that people see on a card and oh, that fight's gonna be fucking fun, and that's about it. Alex White may not be in the UFC next month. I mean.
Oh, I don't know why, but I was not ready to relive Clay Collard, Alex White once you guys mentioned it. I just burst into laughter. Yeah, Alex White. Oh man, it was just a sloppy fight all around, and both of them got in some interesting striking exchanges. Their grappling was rough. Both of them kind of had moments where you're just like, what are they doing? Clay Collard had a triangle for a little bit, and Alex White did basically nothing to defend it, and that proved sufficient to stalemate Collards.
Oh, God.
Submission offense, and then Alex White goes for a heel hook or an ankle lock. Clay Coward does the right thing. He stands up. He gets that foot on the ground, and then he does what exactly you're not supposed to do and drop your knee and try to limp leg out of it and like basically give the guy a heel hook. And Alex White doesn't notice it. And they kind of end in this awkward position where Clay Coward's just kind of offering his heel and Alex White is refusing to twist his knee off.
Yeah, I mean, we could literally spend all day like detailing everything that went wrong in that fight from a technical perspective, and I do mean all day. Like, it would take us all day to do that. Like,
yeah, at least Collard's got a functional infighting game offensively, not in any other, not defensively, not in any other way. But that's about all you can take out of that fight. Is it like, yeah, when he gets inside, he can actually hit somebody, which is good.
Well, he's a homeless man's Justin Gaethje without the wrestling and without the top flight athleticism and without the top flight power. But in terms of like backing you to the fence and throwing combinations like that, while getting punched in the face, that's like a thing that he can do.
That is absolutely a thing he can do.
Yeah. But,
he can be a featherweight. Oh God, the Executioner, Joey. But he could be a featherweight Joey Beltran.
That's actually not a bad comparison for him at all. Like,
no, and the thing is though, when you think about sizing down Joey Beltran, that's a strange proposition.
It is. Yeah, I mean, there's always the chance when you're talking about a guy like this, like that he could really, really drastically improve because he's young. He's got upside. Well, I don't know that he has upside. He's a young fighter.
He's young.
Has time and room to grow.
It's abusing the term upside. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I don't want to cheapen it. Wait, but so who's up next? I think we have spent
up
way.
Next, okay, yeah, we got it. So up next is actual prospects: Sergio Pettis and Matt Hobar. Hobar is more or less hitting that streak that tells you that he's probably got the ability to have a lengthy UFC career in him, but it's as a mid-card gatekeeper. Like he's hitting the kind of losses that separate the prospects from the non-prospects here.
Yeah, I think Hobar's kind of getting that he's going to be the gatekeeper to the division sort of type, where if you can beat him, then you're in, and if you can't, the UFC gives you a little bit of time outside. I thought Sergio Pettis' fight, was like such a nice encapsulation of him as a fighter right now. The first round was quite literally everything that's wrong with Sergio Pettis. He's hittable, which we saw immediately. He is far too content to play guard, which he spent a lot of time playing open guard with Hobar standing, which is, for a lot of fighters, an immediate signal to scramble back up to their feet. And he even spent some time in that passive turtle that we brought up last time. And then the next two rounds were everything that's right with Sergio Pettis, with some very nice striking, some very nice angle work in counter-striking, and really targeting in on that left eye of Hobar's with that right cross of his. So I thought it was a good, like, kind of cage time sort of fight for Sergio Pettis.
Yeah, I really took just to kind of play off that. I think in the first round with Sergio getting cracked, the reason why that happened is because he was trying to play the inside angle. So when you have an opposite stance matchup, you can either play inside angle or outside angle. Outside angle is the common one. That's what you're always taught to do in an orthodox southpaw matchup, is to get your lead foot outside your opponent's, because it shortens the distance for your rear power hand to travel. It gives you a dominant angle to land from your power side, both kicks and punches, but more commonly the punch. Inside angle is the more advanced way to build off that. When you're a more experienced striker fighting an inexperienced striker, it is super effective, because you just let the guy get all the way to the outside, then you take like a quarter pivot to land your shot. Now the danger is obviously that you're circling into your opponent's power hand, and that's how Pettis got dropped early in the fight. He got cracked trying to cut the inside angle, throw his right cross, and Hobar threw an overhand left over the top of it. That's how he got hit. So, but you know, after that, he was fine on the feet playing the inside angle. You know, it just took him a little while to adjust to the distance. I think Hobar's length really shocked him. Like, he seemed really surprised by how long he was.
Yeah, I think in a sense, at least part, and what I saw, you know, I didn't notice the inside angle early. I think it definitely played a factor late, and I don't doubt at all that you're right on that too. But I think there was also maybe a sense that Pettis came out with the expectation that he would just be athletically head and shoulders way above Hobar,
Mm-hmm.
and that he didn't really, you know, it was just sort of like, I don't have to worry about what you're going to do at all. I can just do whatever I want, and it's going to work. And and I think that's something we even saw out of his brother, you know, further up the card against Gilbert Melendez, was just this attitude of like, I can sit here with my hands down and I can just walk in and, you know, land my shots because I'm so much better than you. It doesn't even have to. I don't even have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got hit really hard, and then, you know, suddenly it's like, okay, wait. This is, you know, there's more going on here than this. And when he actually took the time to work and like make, you know, think about his technique and what he wanted to do technically, he was just so much better.
Well, Rufus Sport is a much more tactical than strategic camp, if we want to put it in those terms. Their fighters are much more tactical, and the way that they game plan seems to be very tactical. They're training for specific situations in striking exchanges, in wrestling exchanges, and in grappling exchanges, far more than they are looking at the overall picture of what I need to do, of like, what do I need to do to win 3 of 5 rounds or 2 of 3 rounds. And, you know, sometimes that works really well. That works great when you're fighting a guy who tends to think really strategically, like Benson Henderson. Like, a guy like Benson Henderson is not good at thinking about the small moments of a fight, and you can beat him by winning a collection of those small moments. Works really terribly against a guy like Clay Guida, who is just going to grind you into oblivion. And so you're looking for these dynamic moments and ways to win things when really you're just losing the aggregate. And so I think that, like, and that definitely came through in Pettis Melendez, but I think it was true of Sergio as well. So what do you think, after the fight, Pettis was talking about dropping to 125. What do you think of that?
I don't like it. And I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it could work for him. It could do something for him, but I don't think it's necessary. And at the point it's not necessary, I don't like a fighter doing it.
I don't think it solves any of the problems that he's experiencing right now in the cage. I think he has some issues and things that are preventing him from running through guys, but I never am thinking, man, he's too small for this guy. Those aren't the problems I feel he has. So, I mean, it might be a problem down the road, but currently I don't look at the matchups and be like, oh, why did this go to decision? Why did he lose the first round? My first thought is, well, he's too small.
So I'm of two minds about this. I would say I don't disagree with the things that you're saying. I would say size does matter. It really, really does. Not because he's getting out-muscled or thrown around or anything like that, but the size of his frame is a real problem consistently fighting dudes who are 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", the way that he has. And guys are, like, the sad fact of the matter is that if you're a dude who walks around at 150 or 155, you're a UFC flyweight. You're not a bantamweight anymore. As messed up as that sounds, like, you know, Ian McCall is a 155-pound guy who cuts down to 125. One of my colleagues at SureDog, Tristan Critchfield, when he talked to John Dodson not that long ago, Dodson told him that he walks around at 162 pounds to make the cut to 125. Demetrius Johnson is a bit of a smaller dude. I think he probably walks at 145 to 150 or so. But still, Sergio Pettis is a guy who walks at 145, 150, 155, and in that range, you're a UFC flyweight. Like, so, and again, you know, it's not about getting tossed around. It's that when you're 5'6" and you're fighting guys who are 5'10", especially as a striker, you need that extra space because it extends your effective range so much. It allows you to put more volume on a guy.
Yeah, you know? I wonder about that because, I mean, he's got a pretty long reach though, doesn't he? I mean, kind of unusually long for his height.
I think it's slightly longer than you would expect based on his height, but not like freakishly long.
Yeah, I don't know. It just I guess it plays into a weight cutting is as like a solution that I don't like. But yeah, I do see. I mean, if he has zero problems making flyweight, and it's just the easiest world for him, then I guess why not? I mean, it just seems to me like so much of a making a change just that I don't see as helping him at all. But
You feel it's like the classic, well, something's wrong, so let's change weight class sort of move, where that'll solve all of our problems, and then it ends up you're still the same fighter, you've just cut a couple extra pounds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you, and I think that like as time goes on, he's going to end up a bantamweight simply because if you look at the way that his brother has put weight on over the years, there's going to come a time where it's not possible for him to make that cut anymore, even if he can do it now. I mean, like Pettis started off as a small lightweight. Like he was, you know, he was making his water cut from like 161, 162, and I would imagine he probably walked at 170 to 175. You looked at Pettis the Elder on Saturday, and he was a true lightweight. I mean, he looks like he's walking around at like 180, 185 now. I mean, he looked big.
well, yeah, and you look at how wide across the shoulders Sergio is, and he's not a small kid. Like at 5'6", he's a huge 5'6". Like his torso is really broad.
Yeah, he's definitely. Well, you know what he has, and this is something that we've come back to a couple of times in different discussions. But he's got the body type of a dude who's been in a strength and conditioning program since he was 15 or 16.
Yeah,
which is not true of a lot of fighters. You know, like he's got the build of a professional athlete now because he has effectively been a professional athlete since he was a teenager.
yeah.
And you know, so in that sense, it's possible he could end up competing. He could end up being just fine at bantamweight if he stays on that, because he's going to end up as a 165-pound dude. You know.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a real question there as to whether you want to like impede his natural growth by forcing a cut down to flyweight. Like think about what a problem that was for Anthony Johnson, who is now a true light heavyweight.
Well,
like,
did you read like what he said or hear what he said about his cuts to flyweight and how they used to go?
No, I didn't see that.
He went deaf in 1 ear. His voice changed. He was having chest pains. Sergio.
Jesus Christ.
He was down to 2% body fat.
That sounds that probably isn't right, because I'm fairly sure you're dead if you spend any significant time with 2% body fat. That sounds absurd.
That is really not healthy for you. Okay, well in that case, no, fuck it. He should not make the cut. Like,
yeah. He's talking about doing some test cuts to do. He said because he's just like, I did it wrong. I can do it better now. It'll go way better, and maybe it will. But I'm just saying, like, you know.
I do think there's something to that because, like, look, you know, we've talked about this many times. We all know where I stand on fucking Mike Dolce and the state of nutritionists and weight cutting in general. And there are better guys out there, and there are better ways to do it. And,
of course, like, I don't doubt that he can do it better than that. It's just, I do wonder about whether he needs to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are all legitimate questions.
All right, so next up we have Raquel Pennington, Ashley Evans Smith. Not quite a prospect fight.
Sure.
I will say I was kind of wrong in that Ashley Evans Smith lost. But it's not like she lost because Pennington was way better in the clinch, Pat.
Maybe just better in general, Zane.
Maybe.
As showed itself with Pennington getting worked for the first 4 minutes and 50 seconds of that fight.
I'll take the wins however they come, and I think nearly decapitating Ashley Evans Smith with a bulldog choke should count in my favor.
It does. It counts very heavily in your favor.
But
it was an excellent choke.
I mean, I'm actually higher on Ashley Evans Smith after watching that fight than I was beforehand. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting caught by a veteran at the very end of a round. She got sloppy for like 4 seconds, and that was enough to lose her the fight. But that's what happens how many times have we talked about the stereotype of the big strong submission grappler catching the inexperienced fighter with something that they've never seen before? It was stereotypical talented prospect loss.
Yeah, I actually do like Evan Smith's game. She's got the physicality and the size to implement it, and it's very much like a wrestling, kickboxing pressure game. It's not. I don't think she has the power and finishing ability in any one area that I'm like, oh, she's just gonna go bulldoze people. But she can be a tough fighter for the division.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And she marked up Pennington for a good portion of that fight, took her down, was looking really good, and then, as you said, in the closing seconds of the round, shout out FS1 for getting that NOS commercial on now.
Oh God.
She put her to sleep. It was somewhat surreal with the commercial where you let go and they're like, oh my God, she's dead, and then NOS commercial just right in your face.
Well, that is what NOS does to you. I've heard.
Yeah,
like actually kills you.
Yeah. I don't know if you read that great article on like women's UFC culture.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
And the review of like what it was like to drink all of these different MMA sport drinks. That was so fucking amazing.
It was the highlight of an awesome article. I'll look it up and I'll retweet it again tonight. But if you haven't read this article, it's fantastic. I think it was in Matter. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. And it's basically following the TUF 20 cast and then going through and looking at the culture of women fighters in the UFC. And it's just totally amazing because there's for an outside voice tackling MMA, there's none of the due deference to rhetoric paid that almost every other article of that type does.
Yeah, it is a truly outstanding piece. Highly recommend if you read it. So where else are we at prospect-wise? What do we think of Cory Anderson, guys?
I love that fight for Anderson. I'm gonna say it because nobody was impressed with it. I loved it.
I think it says something that all of us, as we were the three of us were G-chatting as were G-chatting as that fight was going. We're all like, this is great. This is Cory Anderson doing exactly what he needs to do to improve as a fighter. And then you're reading the rest of Twitter and they're like, this sucks. This is boring. Cory Anderson is not good. Why has he not gotten this guy out of there? And like I mean, I thought it was fantastic. You need cage time. You know, you need time to hone those things. You need to try things out. And like, I think it says something that within it, like when you're looking at the overall arc of a prospect's career, a fight like this is super helpful in the long run.
Yeah, I think I sent it out on Twitter while we were like, folks, this is it. This is what like a B-level light heavyweight prospect looks like getting cage time. It's athletic. He's got some aspects to his game that work. He's got some holes, and he's got some things that are getting better. And the fights might be terrible, but it was exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I tweeted. I think I tweeted something very similar, and I had to laugh because Ben Askren favorited it, and I'm like, this is me preaching to the converted here with Mr. Askren. But no, I mean, you got to do stuff like that, you know. Yeah. I mean, you got to get the time in. You've got to see how you react under pressure, and like, you know, doing that on the preliminary card of on Fox Sports 1 when really, let's be honest, there aren't that many people watching. Like, that's okay. That's the right time to do it.
And I mean, you got to think too, like, how much better did his striking look in that fight than it has at any point in the past? Mm-hmm. It was way better. He spent way more time on his feet not getting hit or pushing like this at hard shots than he ever has before.
Yeah, I would encourage people who are listening to this who don't believe us, go back on YouTube and watch his fight to get into the TUF house. There's a huge difference in his striking.
Why would you wish that on anyone? God, that was bad.
Watch the first 2 minutes, and you'll get the point that he's actually throwing punches now, like real punches that would probably hurt, as opposed to like pushing people with speed with his closed fist.
What can only be described, and generously at that, as flailing.
Yeah.
But,
and he's got an actual clinch offense, like a clinch striking game now. Yeah. You know, and unfortunately, this is the other flip side of this too. And I just want to point this out because I think it's important with prospects, and it's something that a lot of fans, I hate that they do. Like, I want to do it. It's natural to want to do it, but you can't. Which is, it is impossible to look at that fight now and say, Justin Jones is way better than I thought he would be, and he's going to do really well.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got beat up. Like, he did not win any part of that fight. He survived it when he wasn't supposed to, and that's a credit to his toughness, a credit to his athletic ability. But he's so raw, even if he drops to middleweight, if he gets the wrong matchup, if he gets like Magnus Sedenblad or somebody like that for some reason, they just throw him in against somebody, or he gets Eddie Gordon, he could be out of the UFC in 5 months, in 6 months. Like, there's nothing that you can take on Justin Jones there and say, oh, wow, that kid Hollywood, I bet he's going to do really well soon.
I think Justin Jones needs to get on that like Tim Boach path and spend some time developing at light heavyweight if he's going to make the move to middleweight, because those are significantly deeper waters in middleweight. And I think in his raw state, I mean, just look just compare the top 15 of the two weight classes, and you have significantly different pictures. I know middleweight drops off also, but there's an established even middle ground in middleweight that light heavyweight lacks or exists at like the 8th spot. So I think he he would be one of those guys, if he's going to drop down, he'd be well advised to spend some time developing at light heavyweight before he made the move down. But I mean, Cory Anderson, tough fight. The man beasts so hard it doesn't even fit within the construct of our time of day-week structure. So, I mean, what can you do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think? Just one last real quick note about Cory Anderson. You mentioned how much better his clinch striking looked, and that's absolutely true. That was the big takeaway from that, was how dominating he was on the inside, the way he used single collar ties really effectively, switched around, control position against the cage through good knees. What do you think about the idea of it? So, I mean, obviously his base is wrestling. What do you think about the idea of building a wrestler's game from the inside out like that?
What do you mean from the inside? Like building his game from the, like teaching him to clinch strike and then teaching him to kickbox? Yeah. I think that clinch offense, like wrestling, if you're talking about skills, because athleticism, toughness, chin, things like that can't really be taught. They can in some ways, but not in others. Those are all obviously like big skills you look for straight out of the gate. But or big talents you look for. But in terms of skills, wrestling is first and clinch striking is second, no matter who I'm looking at, because you have to be able to, like, the fight is always going to end up there. And I see so many fighters, especially good range strikers, who consistently walk themselves into the clinch and out of striking range. You have to be a better, like a great clinch striker is a great MMA fighter. That's basically.
Yeah. I'll throw in. I think that's the way people are training. I think that's the way people are going to be training wrestlers. That inside out sort of thing. Because for a long time we saw, we got this great wrestler. He can get fights to the ground. He can keep fights standing. Let's teach him to strike on the outside. And it was two skills that didn't mesh. It actually, you had a lot of. It was that whole wrestlers fall in love with their striking. Well, it's not so much that they fell in love with their striking. They only knew how to strike or to wrestle, and they never really put the two of them together, and that was like the final stage of their evolution as MMA fighters, and I feel it's far more natural. I think it's something that Ronda Rousey's team is doing with her very well, where they're, all right, we have a fantastic clinch fighter here in terms of throws and a finisher on the ground. Before we make her an outside boxer, let's make her a killer in the clinch. Let's make her clinch striking just absolutely brutal, because she's going to get there anyway, because it takes a pretty advanced striker in MMA to avoid the clinch in the first place. Mm-hmm. And even the really advanced strikers like Anthony Pettis, it took him a little while to adjust to just the bull rush of Gilbert Melendez getting him against the fence. So I think that's the way that wrestlers should be learning MMA, frankly, at this point.
That's you keep coming back to him I keep coming back to him as an example, but Justin Gaethje, that's exactly what they did. Like, at first, all he was doing was getting guys in the clinch and beating the shit out of them, and then slowly but surely he added a range striking game and low kicks and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think that's the future. With rare exceptions, I think there are some wrestlers who are better as in and out strikers because that's the nature of their wrestling game. Mm-hmm. Guys who have a really explosive shot from outside, like. It makes sense to teach them to disguise that shot with work at range. But like Phil Davis, talked about him before. Connor and I talked about him with Coach Mike on Heavy Hands a few weeks ago. Like, that's a dude where there's just zero middle ground where his game would be at its most effective, where he just has zero tools. He doesn't have any tools in the clinch. He doesn't have tools. His striking game does not meld with his wrestling style. Like, if he's the poster child for how to do it wrong, Cory Anderson right now at this point looks like he's a poster child for how to do it right in the developmental process.
Yeah, I mean, an inability to close the distance is basically what kills 90% of wrestlers and grapplers specialists in MMA, is their inability to figure out how do I actually get inside and fight there and then get the takedown. Like, they are so bad at it. I mean, the number of guys you see who go in with both hands out and their head up trying to close the distance, and it's just, you're asking to get knocked out.
Yeah, there's a lot of ugly shit happening there. So is that all we got on 181? Should we look ahead to this weekend?
Yeah, I think that's all there was on that card. I mean, there's a lot of other established fighters, building fighters. I mean, you could call Eddie Gordon a prospect. He's a bit old on that track. He certainly hit a huge setback.
You mean by setback, you mean getting corpseified by Josh Salmon?
Yes, by setback I mean getting corpseified by Josh Salmon. But right now he just basically looks like a good athlete who's still developing his game and got caught. I mean, he was winning that fight. I love Josh Salmon, but Josh Saman, but that was a fight that Saman was losing and Gordon was winning, and that's the kind of knockout that happens to decent prospects when they take tough fights.
Epic walk-off knockout, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great moment for Saman.
Yeah, that's all I care about, really.
Yeah.
All right, so moving ahead, Ultimate Fighter 20. We've got a number of prospects fighting on the undercard, and fighting throughout. Really quickly, it seems like this card is almost totally split between like the prospects on one side and the non-prospects on the other side, although there's a few that are both or neither. We got Angela Hill, Alex Chambers, Tisha Torres, Joanne Calderwood, and then we've got our top four, which are Penne, Namajunas, Marcos, and Esparza. Either of you guys got like any one of those fighters that you are most looking at as, and we should get into this too, because TUF 20, Ultimate Fighter, grading prospects, terrible way to do it.
Yeah, it's a pretty awful way to examine any fighters. I mean, it's MMA, but it's MMA. It's a different form of MMA, and that's because people are making weight cuts consistently in a small span of time. You have people training together and not with the regular camps and not getting full training camps. You have weird unwritten house rules, like the long one about like, oh well, no leg locks on TUF and stuff like that, and the fact that it's 2 rounds, so it becomes a weird form of sprint MMA where you're not guaranteed a third round unless the fight, unless one person has each round. So I don't really ever try to judge too much from TUF unless a fighter looks just absolutely fantastic, and not in like a Uriah Hall, like, oh, he's just running through guys sort of way, but in a like, oh, I've seen this person fight before, and this looks like a more advanced form of their fighting style.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something. It really is something fundamentally different, and I think it says a lot as we're talking about this weekend's prospects that Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Claudia Gadelha, who are fighting on the UFC on Fox undercard, that neither of them was on this show. Gadelha was offered a spot on the show and turned it down because she didn't think that she could make the weight. She didn't think she could make the weight 3 times in that sort of stretch of time. And she was probably right. If you've seen Claudia Gadelha, she's huge for the weight class. She cuts a lot of weight to get down there. And but you know what? Whoever wins that tournament is keeping Claudia Gadelha's belt warm for her. Claudia Gadelha is going to beat, I'm almost certain, is going to beat whoever ends up being the winner of that because she's so much more advanced as a fighter. But she can't be on TUF because of the way that it's structured. And I think that in and of itself should tell us about the limitations of the format when you're trying to crown a divisional champion, as a result.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Van Zant also was not able to be on TUF because she was too young to drink and therefore wouldn't be allowed in the house.
Yeah, because she was only 20. They wouldn't allow her in the house. Yeah.
Yeah, but okay. So then, returning to the prospects of TUF, Hill, Chambers, Torres, Calderwood.
Chambers is like 33. She's not really a
Alex
prospect.
Chambers is? I thought she was a lot younger than that. Am I thinking of the right person?
Oh yeah, she's
30. Actually, she's 36.
Oh, 36. Okay, she's just had a short career. So okay, Hill, Torres, Calderwood, and then Namajunas, Marcos. I think and
Penny.
Garza and Penne. But I gotta say, I think Marcos is the fighter that's probably most likely to go from totally unknown to really top divisional talent, just because she has some of the slickest, most technical and applicable wrestling I've seen of a woman in MMA at all. Period.
Really has beautifully changed takedowns. Like
Yeah.
we'll shoot a double. She gets stuffed, comes up high, finishes with a trip, things like that. Like, really beautiful chain wrestling. The problem is, and you got to think that her striking will come along. She's already got it. She's already got a pretty good grappling game. But she's also an awesome athlete, and that's something to bear in mind. And this, whether she makes it to the final or not, we don't know. I think it shows just how far athleticism and the ability to make that weight, because she's big for the weight class, she cuts a lot. If you're big enough and you can cut that weight, you can put yourself through that, you can put your body through that, and you can wrestle, and you're an awesome athlete. Those are things that show up really well on TUF. Now the question is, where's she been training since then? And I think that there's a real chance that if she's not at a bigger camp, if she hasn't been training with better fighters, then maybe that kind of that development process kind of stalls out a little bit.
It could, and I mean, it could happen temporarily, but I think in the long run, she's got the kind of raw tools over a lot of these other women. Because the women I talk about, Torres, Hill, they all have good things that they do well, and they're all good young fighters developing well. But she definitely, just raw tools, strikes me as like one of those fighters where it's like, wow, that's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
Well, the thing to bear in mind here about, especially about Tecia Torres, who is a plus athlete. She is a very plus athlete. Torres is still kind of getting into her physical prime, whereas Marcos is like 4 years older. She is in her athletic prime as we speak right now. Whereas Torres is still developing. Joanne Calderwood is actually, I guess Calderwood's 27.
Yeah.
I think there are a number of fighters on this card. Rose Namajunas being the big one, who are still developing physically. And really, in general, most of them are prospects. I mean, Lisa Ellis is not a prospect. Lisa Ellis is a journeywoman. Heather Jo Clark is a journeywoman. I think Beck Rawlings is closer to a journeywoman than her fans would admit. I really don't think she's all that great, and I wouldn't consider her a prospect. But yeah, I mean, out of all of them, so Zane, you think Marcos probably has the most long-term upside. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I think Marcos is a solid pick. I'm a big fan. I mean, just going outside. Obviously Rose is a pretty interesting. She's an interesting fighter. I mean, she's really fun to watch fight. She's super young. She's only 22, and she just brings a hyper aggression into the cage, and it's gonna bite her in the end. I mean, we already saw Tecia Torres out-grapple her, but she's this high flying submission specialist who will get you on the ground and just try to twist something off. It doesn't matter what it is. She just wants to grab it and wrench it off. And on the feet, she aggressive. She gets after it. She goes for. She's got a developing striking game, I think is fair to say. She looks better on her feet. Not each time out, but there are certainly advances being made there. She's going to be a lot of fun to watch develop, and in the current state of the strawweight division, I think being something of a submission specialist who's aggressive on the feet can play and be a top 5, top 10 type fighter pretty easily. And then Jessica Penne, I just enjoy watching her fight. She's obviously already won a championship at a lower weight class, so I'm not sure if she'd still really be a prospect. We know she can perform on a pretty high level. Her grappling game's good, but not bulletproof. Obviously, Michelle Watterson catching her in a pretty slick armbar back in Invicta 5. I think it's one of those things. Strawweight was a solid addition because I think we have like 5 or 6 fighters here who are all intriguing fighters who could all be taking the belt from each other. And while you don't have like a Ronda Rousey dominant whatever superstar type, we have a division that's going to be an interesting division, and I think this one's going to be more of the division that kind of wins over fans, or like the fans who are kind of reticent about women's MMA, where you're going to have this intriguing strawweight division with a bunch of really good fighters at the top of it, all just beating the snot out of each other trying to take that belt. And I think honestly the TUF season is one of the is going to undermine it for a while because it's made everyone hate all the fighters to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says. Women's bantamweight is like light heavyweight or heavyweight. It's not real deep simply because there are not a lot of women out there physically who are going to be 135 pounds when you cut weight down and are like 6 or 7% body fat. Like that's just not like a large pool to draw from. Whereas women's strawweight is much closer to like lightweight welterweight, like featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, where the vast bulk of American women and women around the world, where if they're in shape, where they're 5, 6, 7% body fat, when they cut that weight down, that's where they're going to be. So it's just a much deeper talent pool to draw on. And when you have a deeper talent pool, as we've seen, you end up getting a more advanced and more fun metagame. It's like, because at women's bantamweight, everybody's training to beat Ronda Rousey. Like that's the way it is, because
which
she's
is sad because they're none of them are gonna. Like that's a sad thing.
Well, and what I'll say too is that in these lighter weight the much lighter weight classes, as Pat pointed out, you get a different metagame. Like the striking's different, the grappling is much different. And for a long time in the sport grappling scene, a lot of people always talked about how they liked watching the little guys because the little guys had the crazy, fun, high-flying matches with funky stuff, and then more recently it's slowed down on the sport grappling side of things. But I think women's strawweight, atomweight in Invicta gives you some fantastic fights. And I think strawweight's going to bring the same thing to the UFC, especially since you have one of those like funky, smaller Penne who just like folds herself in half to find submissions.
Yeah. It is one of the things I love about strawweight is I actually think that's the point really where you begin to see how women's MMA can both. It's like women's tennis, sort of, where you begin to see how the game can be absolutely equivalent and every bit as enjoyable as the men's game because it offers something completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of that is fundamentally true. I think like, especially too, part of the reason I think that Gadelha is going to just rule the division is because she's playing a much more advanced game than the rest of them are. Like we talk about the fun, funky stuff. Gadelha is playing like a tried and tested metagame because she can do everything, because she's a Nova União fighter, and because she can wrestle, and because she has a brutal pop game, because she can crack with combination punching and low kicks on the feet. Like she is playing a game that we know works. And while I think that those we're going to see a lot of fun fights with a lot of interesting things happening at strawweight, like I still think that Gadelha is just going to rule the roost based on that.
She's a great fighter, and
yeah,
I don't doubt that at all. And especially if I would say this, if Esparza wins, Gadelha rules, no question. Like that's Gadelha's belt. Or Gadelha's belt, without question, because Esparza matches up incredibly poorly with Claudia Gadelha.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It becomes really interesting though if Rose Namajunas wins.
Yeah.
And I floated my Gadelha thing on Twitter yesterday, and I was shocked at how many people are like all in on Thug Rose to be the one who rules the division for a long time, coming off a TUF. And okay, like I too am a big fan of Thug Rose. I love her game.
Mm-hmm.
But she has 3 professional fights.
Yeah.
And no matter who she's trained with, and no matter how much work she's put in the gym, and even if she gets 3 fights on the Ultimate Fighter, she is still a prospect. And I mean, I think very highly of her. In my preview, I compared her to a super raw kind of cross between Anthony Pettis and Carlos Condit, because she's got the pathological aggression, she's got a super dynamic kind of game, but she can be shut down by people who are playing a slower paced, controlling game against the fence and from top position. She can get controlled that way. And like that's what Tisha Torres did to her when she has struggled in fights. That's what people have been doing to her, and that's a game that pretty much every high-level fighter, including Claudia Gadelha, but also Joanna Jędrzejczyk, should she win that fight, that's a game that both of them know how to play because they have that experience.
Yeah.
And that's something that it took Pettis and Condit, who are like, I'm not saying that Rose is going to turn into them, but she does things that remind me of them.
So that's a good jumping off point to the UFC on Fox 13, as we were talking about Jędrzejczyk and Gadelha, because this is a show with a lot of young fighters and not actually that many prospects. But the two brightest ones are Gadelha and Jędrzejczyk. And they're really, they're the most likely to win a title in their division. Henry Cejudo may be a blue chip prospect, but the likelihood of him wearing the bantamweight crown at any point is pretty fucking slim. So we should talk about Gadelha and Jędrzejczyk first. It's a great fight. Honestly, I think a lot of people still, not only is her name hard to pronounce, but a lot of people just have no idea who Jędrzejczyk is, and it's too bad, because not only is she an awesome combination volume striker, but her takedown defense is practically bulletproof. That was something that when Lima recently fought Nina Ansaroff, and everybody was like, oh, Nina Ansaroff's going to win this. We saw Juliana Lima can't take women down. It's like, do you realize how good Jędrzejczyk takedown defense is? Like, the reason that she couldn't get taken down is because she is incredibly hard to take down. She's one of the few women that does everything right when defending a takedown.
Yeah, she has fantastic defensive wrestling technique. The way that she's built gives her a lot of leverage in those cage takedown defense scenarios. Just because of the length of her limbs, she gets a ton of leverage. It's the same thing that makes her an awesome body puncher. Awesome body punchers, in my experience, tend to be people who have long limbs because they don't have to expose themselves as much to lean down and throw it. But those same long limbs give her tremendous leverage in the clinch. Give her a nasty overhook game when she's trying to hip out. Great whizzer when she's defending takedowns. She is built to be a sprawling brawler, and she's very, 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 very good at it. And so that's like I was acting kind of like it's a foregone conclusion that Gadelha beats her. It's not at all. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. Jędrzejczyk is very, very good, and she is going to put leather on Gadelha.
Yeah, I think this fight feeds into the idea that the strawweight division is pretty darn deep for a women's division, and we've got a house of Ultimate Fighter that had some pretty good talent on it and some pretty well-known names on it. And then outside of that, even in events surrounding the finale, we've got top 10 level fighters. And in Gadelha, a fighter who could legitimately take this division over. It makes for I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think Gadelha wins this fight, but I can see a lot of scenarios in which she doesn't win this fight. And they're both powerhouse type fighters. It's going to be a really fun one and like a really excellent. I feel like the winner of this fight is going to cease to be a prospect. The winner of this fight is stepping up. It is going to be on that next level of fighter where I feel like the loser needs to go back to the drawing board and not maybe rework their game, but figure out where did it go wrong.
Yeah. So let's also talk Cejudo, because he's really the other guy that is on this card that's really worth talking about. And he's a blue chipper. He has to be because of his background. He's an elite athlete. He's been able to achieve success at a incredibly high level in another sport. Is he going to be the UFC's Bubba Jenkins, though?
I mean, it's fairly possible, just because the larger story coming out of his weight problems has been attributed to a potential lack of dedication to the sport, which is something that, because the man knows how to cut weight. He made weight for the Olympics, and he made weight for his entire wrestling career. So there's a lot of questions of why is he having weight issues now. He's a fantastic athlete. He does play more of that outside striking game. He's got a lot of speed. His hand speed's really good. He's working a low kick game that's coming along. A lot of his striking is mostly confined to lunging strikes right now. Obviously, outstanding wrestling, and if he gets you on the ground, he beats the snot out of you.
He really has his takedown game is very well adapted for MMA. It's big, powerful takedowns. He is an awesome finisher. When he gets in on you, you are going to land, and you are going to land hard. And I think that translates very well for him. His athleticism is freakishly next level kind of stuff. I mean, he is that kind of dude. The way that he moves screams elite, world class athlete. But the question with him is always going to be dedication. He kind of flamed out of wrestling because he had like a 3-year period after the 2008 Olympics where he really didn't take it very seriously, and he didn't train very hard, and he was off doing other things. And he struggled to make the weight at the 2012 trials too. But it shows you how talented he is, that he was still real close to getting that Olympic berth. It's like that's how talented he is, that he's a dude who can roll out of bed and beat some of the world's best wrestlers coming off like 4 or 5 months of training when they have been working for 4 years for that shot. And I kind of wonder if that's what we're going to see with his MMA career. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that he's going to beat Dustin Kimura because he's Henry Cejudo. If that makes any sense at all. He is that much more talented of an athlete that he almost could roll out of bed and beat Dustin Kimura. The question is, when he starts running into those bumps higher up the ladder, what's he do then? Does he double down, stick around, and get better, or does he just quit? Because it could be either one, and anybody who tells you that they know is lying to you.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, it is. It's hard to tell because after a while, at some point, you do. Even in a division like bantamweight, which is not a talent-rich division at the moment, it's somewhat akin to middleweight in ways where you've got a reasonable group of talent at the top and then a big drop-off to the next stage. But even there, at some point, he is going to end up meeting fighters who, even if they aren't as athletic as him, he's almost certainly going to lose somewhere in there.
Yeah. The real question is, when he loses or kind of has his ups and downs, does he spawn a BJ Penn-like meme of, motivated Cejudo?
God.
See,
motivated Cejudo beats anyone at any weight.
See, I don't think we're ever going to run into that with him, because I think when he has that moment, he's either all in or he just quits entirely. I don't think we're going to see. He's the kind of guy where we would see like a string of underwhelming performances. Like if he wasn't going to do it, he'll just go off and do something else. Like I know he had a WWE offer on the table, so that wouldn't surprise me if he eventually went and did that. He wants to get into acting. It wouldn't surprise me if he went and did that. I mean, and you know what? Like, if he wants to go do those things, more power to him. But I don't think he's going to be the kind of guy who half-asses it for a long period like BJ did. Either he's in or he's out.
Yeah. Other than that, I think Anthony Burchak might be a pretty decent fighter if he can kind of get his game in control. He's a decent athlete, looks all right, but I'm not really otherwise. I don't know. There's nobody else on this card that screams must talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Burchak is a great finisher. When he smells blood, he's on you, and that's always nice to see in a young prospect. Burchak is also he's also an anomaly in this day and age because he actually had time to develop on the regional scene. So he's coming into because he was the MFC bantamweight champion, if memory serves correctly. So he's one of the rare guys that we see these days who is actually a polished prospect coming in. Burchak is not one of those it's going to take him 7 fights to develop. He's like a you win for and you should be fighting top 2 or top 3 competition kind of prospect.
Yeah, he's got a really nice submission wrestling game that I like. Like, he wrestles well and powerfully, and then he's really aggressive in hunting for submissions. So, I think he'll beat up Ian Entwistle, who is a kind of a one-trick pony, fun fighter, but not
like a half a trick pony.
Yeah, a half-trick pony. Otherwise, yeah, there's nothing that we need to really get into.
Yeah, Barberena Ellenberger, I think, is going to be an absolutely brutal fight to watch. Yeah. Neither of those guys is that exciting.
I'm not really big on the Joe Ellenberger train though either. I went back and, like, in anticipation of this, I went back and watched some of his fights to see if he was worth talking about, and I immediately regretted that decision.
He's just not that kind of prospect. There is a youngster debuting who maybe we should talk about. I'm seeing his name is Joe Riggs.
I think that guy could do something.
What a promising young man that is.
I heard he won Bellator's reality show, The Fight
Master.
Yeah. He is the Fight Master. So, on that note, no, I got fucking nothing else.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. You can find all of us on Twitter: Patrick at Patrick_Wyman, Tom at TP_Grant, and me at DZane Simon. You can find Tom and I on Bloody Elbow. You can find Patrick over on SureDog. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up because that shit means something. Give it a like on YouTube. And follow MMANation.com. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for dropping by, guys.